Right. Hello and welcome back to Changing Channels, an exploration of the crossover between video games, TV, film, books and more, hosted by GamesIndustry.biz. This is part of our GI Live project. That's 7 weeks of digital events and extensive coverage for major conferences like GDC and DevCon. You can find out more at live.gamesindustry.biz. That's if you're not watching there already. This is our penultimate session of the day, and it's worth noting now that this is a pre-recorded session, hence the sudden change of clothing. That means you're welcome to put questions in the live chat on YouTube, but we won't hear them because we recorded this 2 days ago. Joining me for this session is Alex Nichiporchik, CEO of games publisher TinyBuild, who's here to talk about how indie brands can also extend beyond video games, looking in particular at the success of Hello Neighbour. Alex, thank you so much for joining us this evening.
Thanks for having me, James. Always a pleasure.
Brilliant.
We have totally practiced this intro, right?
Absolutely. Totally practiced, full 100% professional.
This is try number 117.
So let's see how many take. I reckon we can get to a nice even 120. So first question, like for those who don't know, and we do have some kind of non-gaming people watching along, it's like, what is Hello Neighbour? Like, if I summarize it as an indie horror game, that doesn't quite do it justice. Like, what is Hello Neighbour?
I think, about 4 years ago, I would have agreed with you that it was as an indie horror game, was a concept of you sneaking into your creepy neighbor's house to find out what he's hiding in the basement. And the gameplay was centered around this AI that learns from your every move and reacts to it. Flash forward to 2020, Hello Neighbor has become this brand that transcends through different mediums. It has the original game, the prequel, a multiplayer spin-off, a book series, an animated TV show, and a whole lot of other things in the works. So it started off as a really small indie game made by a team of less than 7 people. And right now there is close to, if I was to count everyone involved, there is close to 100 people working on it, on the brand in general. Yeah, it's kind of crazy.
And indie at that point is just, it's just brand. It's not indie brand, it's just a brand.
Well, that's not internal people. That's like if I involve everyone on the licensing front, on the production front of the book writing, of plushie design, all of that, right?
Yeah.
Obviously, the games part is very big, and right now we have 3 studios working on this, 3 internal studios working on neighbor-related projects in terms of video games.
Yeah. So, I mean, tell us a little bit more about how all that came about. So, like books, TV show, plush figures. Like, I mean, what was first? What was it about Hello Neighbor that kind of afforded you that opportunity to extend beyond games?
So, I think if we look all the way back, it was a series of happy accidents that then turned into this train that starts moving faster and faster, and then we just need to put rails in front of it. That's kind of like how TinyBuild rolls, and whenever I mention that in the onboarding process for employees, people kind of like have a panic attack. But that's how we roll. But if we look back at how it all started, the happy accident with it is when we started working with the developer of the game, there was an internal prototype that I was really on the fence about. At that point, TinyBuild was really small. We're like around 10 people. And I didn't know if this prototype would fly, mostly because as I get older, like I'm 32 right now, Jesus Christ, I was wondering how would the Minecraft-ish target audience of younger gamers, let's say between 8 and 12, would react to that prototype. And what we did is we tried to verify if our hypothesis that this prototype at its very early stage was going to appeal to a wider demographic, specifically on YouTube. So we just released that internal build that we had as part of the game pitch to all YouTubers everywhere. And that caused a snowball effect. It's actually quite interesting, and I believe that this impacted a lot of how games are being marketed and developed today for TinyBuild, and I believe for many other companies, because I talk about this a lot. Release playable teasers. That's what we did. We released a playable teaser that was supposed to be an internal, non-QA'd, non-properly tested alpha that ended up in the public being known as a pre-alpha. So within that, we tested the hypothesis of core gameplay, character design, and hiding Easter eggs within, this what comes off as a simple sandbox. And then players realize that it's actually much deeper than that initial pitch. Okay, there's an AI, he catches you, you respawn. People started to notice things on the lore, notice things that are and the key art like hidden in the background, like dissecting it really, really in depth to figure out what exactly is the lore of the story. And to be frank, we didn't even know at that time, right? We just had like conceptualizations. But what that did, that mystery box concept, is what drove the game to a the sense of mystery, the sense of discovery. And during development, what we did is, how a lot of companies will like work on trailers and overproduce like marketing materials. We just kept on releasing playables. We have released a total of 5 alphas, including the pre-alpha, and then also a beta. And that is how we got to all of the transmedia part of the Neighbor brand, because the character design was really appealing. It's like this creepy neighbor, and we just started licensing. We just during a random meeting, I miss those, by the way, a random meeting at GEC 3 years ago. We just ran into a couple of guys that were working on Funko Pops, right? And we're like, well, we have this game that's getting like hundreds of millions of views on YouTube, and we decided to try it out. Then suddenly we realized that there is a lot of work involved in essentially licensing out your IP to merchandising. And then we hired a licensing company and focused on making the actual builds, continuing to make these, I call them playable teasers. And the snowball effect from that was when you started seeing more and more of the same brand, you become more aware of it, and the character design just really appeals to it. So that's kind of like me going on a context setting tangent here, but I think help me steer the conversation. What would be most useful for the viewers here, if you don't mind, James?
Love a relevant tangent. So started with the Funko Pops then, and I guess that kind of that feels like a natural extension of a video game, whether regardless of whether or not it's indie, AAA, whatever. Like, because video games are very visual, they've got a very kind of character centric designs. Like the characters of the people are recognized. Like I have to confess, I haven't played Hello Neighbor, but I can instantly, as soon as I hear that brand, I picture the neighbor, I picture the artwork. Which is great for kind of brand recognition. So having toys out there, kind of collectibles out there. I know some people don't like calling Funko Pops toys. Kind of helps with that brand recognition. Yeah. So how do you go from that to say, I'm most intrigued about kind of the books and the TV show. Like, let's start with the books, because those have been so successful. I think we reported earlier this year that I think they've sold like 16 million copies on their own or something.
2 million copies, and they gross 16 million USD.
$16 million US dollars. Yeah, that was it. I was trying to remember my figure. So yeah, 2 million copies sold, $16 million made. I mean, what are even? Is it just like a novelization of the game? Like, what is the? What are the books, and like how have they reached that level of success?
So I think it's important to understand. Like, by the way, I searched for it. I haven't found a case study that is relevant to what we're trying to do with the Neighbor brand. So what happened was through as we started licensing out, and the game kept on being more and more popular, getting more and more popular to the release of the original game back in 2017. We started getting more and more interest from licensors, right? And at one point, Scholastic reached out to us, said that they want to do a book series, and I was like, how do you adapt that to a book, right? So they presented us with a few writing samples from writers that were anonymous, and we sat down and we went like, okay, this writing style from this author and the pitch for the initial book makes sense. It reads really easily, and being from like, English is not my first language. If I can understand, then odds are that kids all over the world can also understand that writing style. So we started off with the first book, and we actually wrote it in conjunction with the development of the prequel to the original game. And as the first book came out, and right now there are, I believe, 4 are out, and there's more coming. I hope I'm not breaking any NDAs. Please don't break NDAs, Alex. Anyway, so as we were developing 2 more games, the prequel and the multiplayer spin-off called Secret Neighbor, the author of the books was writing the books. And what happened in between those two is when we started doing the multiplayer spin-off called Secret Neighbor, we had these five characters, essentially the neighbor and four kids, or up to five kids, that are trying to sneak into the neighbor's house. Initially, we were like, okay, it's boring to have just one character model, right? So we needed to figure out how to diversify the characters there. And we took the characters from the books to put them into the multiplayer spin-off, and then those same characters from the multiplayer spin-off, which are based on the books right here, they were the ones that ended up being the base characters for the TV show. So as far as I know, this has not been done in any medium when games go alongside other mediums and then they compound together in a way that makes sense. That's what really excites me, and that's the crazy part about this whole story is that so the animated series is based on Secret Neighbor, which is a multiplayer spin-off of the original Hello Neighbor game, and the characters within that spin-off are based on the books, which are based on the original game as well. So it all goes in a full circle here.
I can't think of off the top of my head any other franchises that do that.
Yeah, I don't know. If anyone knows, please tell us. I really want to learn
Well,
because we're learning here on the fly.
we sort of had a similar one. So we had Dmitry Glukovsky on earlier in the day, talking about Metro, and like the Metro 2033, the game is an adaptation of the book. Metro 2034, the novel, is nothing to do with the game, just doesn't even acknowledge the game. Metro Last Light is nothing to do with Metro 2034, the novel. But Metro 2035, the novel, is based on Last Light, and the Metro Exodus is based on 2035. That's the only thing I can think of. But even that, then that's only between two mediums. Whereas you have gone, you've gone like game, prequel, books. I love the concept of that because it creates something that fans can really kind of invest in, and they can enjoy parts of the story, or they can get the whole experience by investing in the brand, which is fantastic. I guess is that a barrier though, like to someone fully understanding or fully enjoying Hello Neighbor? Like I love the idea of cross media stuff. I have for years, for generations. But like what was the Star Wars announced recently, like the High Republic era. So you're going to have storylines that are set like long before the prequels, and you have books and comics and video games potentially, and probably a Disney Plus show. And then the idea
Most
of having,
likely, yeah.
yeah, almost certainly a Disney Plus show. But the idea of like kind of having to absorb all of that to follow. I mean, blimey, I struggled with the MCU by the end. I gave up on all the TV series. Like I just stuck to the movies, and even then, I'm pretty sure I'm rambling, but like my point is like these can get messy, and you explaining that just now, like this is a multiplayer game where the characters from the books, but the multiplayer game has then influenced the TV series. Like, how do you make it accessible to people so that because anyone can use any of those as an entry point. So how do you ensure that people understand and enjoy it no matter where they come in and no matter how much they consume?
I think that's the motto here, like the general design principle behind any product, is that each product needs to be able to stand on its own legs by itself, right? So each product needs to be great on its own. So if you're entering the franchise from the book angle, you need to enjoy it as a book, right? And then you will get more out of it by playing a game, and by there is a comic book coming out. There is like the neighbor's handbook where like his designs are explained. So essentially, any point of entry that you use, that should be able to stand on its own legs. And I feel like that's the most important part here in this conversation about merchandising, right? Because if your game is not popular enough, is not good enough, then there's no point in even thinking about merchandising and creating a franchise of that IP, right? So here we know is that a lot of players really interested in multiplayer games got into Secret Neighbor. And then they have discovered the original Hello Neighbor game, and then wanted to explore the prequel. And what I will note is that what we did was a prequel is the opposite of what I just said. You needed to know the original game in and out to really enjoy the prequel. And that was a lesson learned. That's why when we started working on the multiplayer spin-off Secret Neighbor, and we had just recently announced Hello Neighbor 2, we really want to make sure that if this is the first time you're encountering this series in video game form, it should be new to you. And like we need to assume that it's new to you, and we need to figure out a way for you to experience that on its own, and then go to other products, other mediums. And the same was books, and I think the biggest challenge for us was actually the animated series, because as of today, between the shorter version of the pilot and the longer version, we released two versions, 6 and 20 minutes. It has about 20 million views, and I can tell the amount of iteration that went into figuring out how to make that TV series, and it's an animated series based on the game, appealing is insanely difficult. It's a whole different discipline. It's narrative entertainment. It's in coming into it assuming that everyone knows who the characters are was our first try at the draft of the pilot, and doesn't work. Even myself, as someone who like is deeply embedded in the universe, I was like, this is just a mess. Yeah. Oh, okay. There is a creepy neighbor, and then we just assume that you know all of the characters because you read all of the books. That's never going to happen. Even like you mentioned, with the MCU, the initial standalone movies for standalone characters, they spent a lot of time on character development. There's a lot of time on developing the motivations, the personal relationships between them, the obstacles that the characters need to overcome. And I feel like it's really important, no matter which medium you go into. It's a fine balance of assuming that no one knows what your brand is, but then also delivering to the fans. However, the natural approach when you're trying to like, how difficult can it be? I'm just going to write a TV show. Said myself a year ago, and that it's much more difficult than it seems, and there needs to be a really fine line of listening to this. Sometimes you can form this echo chamber of really core fans and understanding what they want, and at the same time figuring out how to bring your product to mass market, and figuring out the balance between that to make that product great. Because if we talk about animation specifically, I strongly believe that that medium has a much wider reach than games. Please don't like throw rocks at me for saying this, because the reasoning behind this is that I see a lot of transference in behavior on specifically younger target audiences. Essentially, if you ask your 6, 7 year old how much time daily they spend on YouTube, you would probably be shocked. And same for Netflix for kids and things like that. So it's just much easier to consume linear entertainment than games. That's why often games will be watched a lot and maybe not played as much as they're being watched. That's where the Let's Play phenomenon comes from. So that's a very long answer to your question.
It's great. No, I love long answers. We do have 45 minutes to fill. I'm going to apologise now. We are about more over a third of the way through, and it's becoming increasingly dark and creepy in my. I'm honestly expecting the neighbour to.
Someone just jumped over the window. Yeah.
So building on that last point, like a linear narrative is, linear entertainment is much easier to consume, and as you say, like a lot of people watch games in that regard. But I find that interesting because obviously, like books and TV are linear entertainment; they are linear narratives. What makes games interesting is the agency, is the player agency, even in something like Hello Neighbor, and particularly in the multiplayer, where essentially you're creating your own story, your own version of events. Like it's the anecdote generator, as so many people say. Like when you take that away, there are some franchises where it's like this isn't as interesting now that this has been taken away. I shan't name any, obviously, but I've been into games like, I've really enjoyed this. Oh yeah, I'll read the comics, I'll read the book, I'll watch the TV. And as soon as you lose control as a player, the whole experience loses something for you because you're not involved anymore. You're just watching a set series of events, and actually it's not as engaging as the game itself. How do you overcome that with books? I mean, as you say, like you've got to kind of stand. Each one's got to stand up on their own. But like, kind of, how do you reach that bar of quality that's expected from books and TV that account for the fact that you do not have the interactivity of the video game?
Yeah, I think there are two very important parts here, and one is something that we learned the hard way is if you're thinking about your game as something that can live in different mediums, you really need to think about characters and character designs, and having essentially an ensemble of cast that players can relate to. Because if you think about video games, especially first-person ones, you always say, "I did this. I got into the neighbor's house. I ran away from here. And then you were referring to it as your own personal experience, especially in emergent gameplay games, right? Therefore, if you add more different characters, what we've seen in Secret Neighbor is the fans instantly started to recognize all the characters from the books. They knew their traits, they knew their inner personal relationships, and then they are also able to identify with very specific characters, and that makes the transition much easier. Even if, like, there is a character trait on a specific character model, right? That makes the fans feel much happier when that character is seen on a different screen, right? On a linear screen, for example. And the second part to this is what you're saying is, you how can you, like, there's a Minecraft movie being made. I heard that, the rumor. I'm not sure if it's confirmed or not, but how do you, like, transfer that into a story, right? Well, you need to think about what are the emotions that your players experience, and how to transfer those emotions into a different medium. With us, it was mystery and this kind of like fear, anxiety, right? Because it is an indie horror game, and that transfers really well to pretty much any other medium. But I think the real challenge there is to how to make your game or your brand that was incepted as a game relatable in that different medium. And my personal favorite example is the Lego movie. I grew up with Legos, and the way that they did, I'm not going to spoil it exactly, of how the characters and the transitions were made, and how you felt like deeply invested into it, and how it was a feel great movie. It gave me the same emotions of, like, hey, this movie is really creative. I felt creative as a kid when I was, like, trying to connect two blocks together. So that transited from essentially like a construction set into the big screen. Here we face a very similar challenge. Like, what did you do in the game? What kind of emotions did you experience? And how can you apply that to a linear narrative? And here, my aside from, like, think about characters, and many of them, because your merchandising agent is going to thank you for it. The other part to this is figure out what makes the emotion great, and talk to someone who is a professional. Like, get an actual professional in whatever field you're trying to get into, be it books, be it TV shows. Get a screenwriter, get someone to take a look at your ideas and help flesh them out, because this is an unprecedented time right now, where we see games transitioning into blockbuster movies and TV shows. Even though The Witcher was based on the book officially, still, we saw The Witcher sales go up, because that kind of medium can just make a huge impact on your core business, which is games. I think that's the point that I want to drive home, is that when you look at all of these initiatives, I think it's important to treat them a little bit as marketing, because the margins in that business are totally different. Like, you're less likely to have a situation where your product in a linear medium makes, like, $1 billion overnight because it becomes a runaway hit. However, treating it as an auxiliary marketing thing that elevates your brand in general, I feel like that's where the real value is, at least for us so far.
I find it interesting as well. Like, you say that, yeah, there's a lot of TV adaptations in particular of games brands. Like, we've seen The Witcher. Yes, as you say, it's based on the books, but let's face it, there are enough nods in the game that it's quite clearly based on the success of the
Come on, Henry Cavill is a gamer. We all know this.
Exactly. We all know this. There are enough side by side shot comparisons of him and video game Geralt in baths to suggest that this is game based. But it feels like the last few weeks in particular, which has been fun when we've been planning changing channels, so many other adaptations have been announced, and it's interesting that not all of them are big brands. Like, there isn't like a Call of Duty TV series, there isn't an Assassin's Creed TV series, but there's going to be a Disco Elysium TV series, and there's going to be, I believe, the company who's working on that. So we've got actually the CEO of that company is in the next session, and that company's working on adaptations for Sleeping Dogs, which is a bit closer to AAA than Disco Elysium, but Echo, which is this stealth game that I have to confess I haven't heard of, and I'm a stealth nut, so I'm surprised by that. Life is Strange, which is definitely kind of indie. Like, I find it interesting that, these can be marketing exercises, and these can be big for the brands. Like, okay, there isn't a a Monument Valley movie, for example, or a Florence movie, but there is going to be a Minecraft because it's huge. I wouldn't be surprised if we'll have a Fortnite movie at some point. But what does it basically say, like, for the opportunities for indie brands, small brands, to reach out, and not necessarily like TV adaptations, although that would be glorious, but to
Mhm.
get books, to get comics, to get these plush deals, like, what does it take? Well, let's focus on this, because you said earlier, like, you need to be popular enough. You need to be popular enough
Mhm.
to warrant these opportunities. I have spoke with many developers over my career, and I've actually come across a few that who pitch from the word go before their first game is even out. We're going to be a big cross media brand. We have got.
Mhm.
I'm not going to name names, obviously, but there was one was like, all right, we've got this multiplayer game. This can be incredible. We're going to have a novel that's going to really go into the lore, and the novel and the multiplayer are going to be
Mhm.
being developed hand in hand. It's like, yeah, but you don't know if anyone's going to play your game, and therefore, why would they
Yeah.
read the book? And lo and behold, I don't think that game or the book has actually come out yet. So, what is the metric for you? Like, what level of success should you have before exploring these options?
Well, I think it's not only about what level of success you have, but it's also how do you show that success? How can you have someone verify that level of success, right? Because we get a lot of game pitches, and then we will often hear things similar to what you just said. Um, but also we'll have situations where people will go like, oh, we have this many people in Discord, and you and me know that having a Discord channel is really great, right? With like tens of thousands or hundreds of thousands of people, and we can kind of like estimate the value. Someone in Hollywood will probably not even know what that is, and even worse, would not be able to verify that, right? Then going into like, for example, using Steam reviews as a metric of popularity. How often do you go to a Steam page and the top upvoted review, even if it's all great, is just like a terrible meme, right? And then someone who is not maybe appreciative of Steam level humor might look at that and go, like, I don't really want to touch that. So I think it's really important to figure out how do you judge your metric of success, and how can you prove it, and then focus on those things. For us specifically, it was with Hello Neighbor, it was YouTube, most definitely YouTube, because with YouTube you can easily track the number of views that you have, and that gives you like you just search for Hello Neighbor in brackets, and sort it by top, and then you can easily see that the game has billions and billions of views, and that really justifies it, right? And I think the metrics of popularity that you mentioned, a little bit too many people, too many game developers focus on like having coverage here and there, and then trying to approach YouTubers. My advice to everyone is actually to try and build a community themselves, because we've seen this happen multiple times after the Neighbor launched, with games like Bendy and the Ink Machine, with the whole Granny series on mobile. There are many indie horror style games, because they would follow like similar things to what we did, that spawn, and then they create their own communities, and then using that as leverage when you approach other mediums makes it a much easier sell for you. So essentially, to your point, what do you focus on? Well, something that is trackable, something that you can definitely say like, hey, we had this many views in this amount of time. Here's why our game is popular. Here's why you should consider it. Versus going into like download numbers or anything like that. That becomes a little bit too iffy, especially with the mobile marketing segment, where there are companies that claim that they have tens of millions of players, but they spend hundreds of millions on marketing, possibly hundreds of millions. So it's a question of what do you focus on. So if I was to do like a quick step-by-step guide, if that's your goal to go cross media, is one, identify where your target audience is. Two, figure out a way how you can track the stats surrounding that, and focus. Three, focus on building out those KPIs. And that, so far right now, the obvious suspects are all of the social medias, right? The Twitters, the Facebooks, the TikToks, and the YouTubes. Uh, it sounds maybe a little bit too simplified when I say it, but that's really it. You need to build a community that follows you and is also hungry for more content in different mediums, because that makes any kind of investing decision based on like a movie or TV production or anything in between, like books, much easier, because they understand that there is an install base that they can leverage as to kickstart their production and then expand and have it go mass market, which is what fortunately happened to us.
Do you have any advice for indies who their game is popular enough? They
Mhm.
plenty of trackable metrics. They say, yes, this is a hit. We think there's enough story and character and scope here
Mhm.
to at least get some Funko Pops out of this. As you say, the beginning of Hello Neighbour's cross brand success was one of those random meetings at GDC. As you
Yeah.
say, I miss meetings. Meetings don't happen anymore. Meetings are a mythical thing of the past at the moment.
What
Um,
meetings?
kind of prior to meetings returning, and then
Mhm.
after meetings are back, like what is the best way to kind of put yourself out there and say, look, here's the thing, I think this could be big in other mediums other than games. Like, how did indies even start to find the right partners for this sort of stuff? Where do they even look?
That's a great question. You know, I want to like use this as a shameless plug, but you need to probably start asking someone with previous experience on this and already established context for just intros, or figure out if you can partner up with someone like us, or there are many other great publishers out there that may have similar context. But I think the more yeah, so that would be the short question there, right? But I think to your point, what I've seen a couple of times with ourselves and with other companies who had successful games that tried engaging in that were essentially approached by large companies, right? Like if you get an email from Hollywood executive something, you freak out, right? You go like, "Wow, oh my god, that is amazing." And I think it's just worth to spend some time talking a little bit about how why there is no Hello Neighbor movie at this point, because there were dozens and dozens of opportunities, and it all comes down to the fine print there, because essentially there were a couple of situations where if we weren't diligent enough, we would have missed very important points in the licensing agreement that would prevent us from doing things in the future. And specifically, if we talk about like cross media and narrative entertainment, it's very very important to understand what kind of rights you're locking in, because it's easy to get super excited. I'm going to have a TV show. I'm going to have a movie. And then you go like, okay, well, the IP remains with me. So what kind of problem can there possibly be? And we're just chatting before this that I had to verify some NDAs, so I can't name any companies, and I won't. But the thing to watch out for is if you're actually engaging in any of these kind of conversations, watch for clawbacks on, for example, you're going to make a you made a game, and I want to make a TV show based on this, right, or a book series. Uh, the contract will most likely try and put something in as to, if I make a character that is new to you, to the universe within my spin-off medium, even though the IP is yours, right? Then I own that character in perpetuity for any other mediums. I've had that kind of crap being pulled on us, and I'm like, no, just sorry, no, just walk away. And things like that are you have no idea how annoyed this gets me and pumped, as you can probably see. But this happens all the time. This is actually one of the main reasons why we decided to self-fund the production of the pilot for the animated show, and we have the writer from the books that worked on that, and we essentially produced the whole thing internally. That's why we spent a lot of time, like stepping on known landmines that we could have avoided if we had actual professionals in the field working on this. But that was just because I can't tell you how annoyed I get when you get to all of the finer details in such deals, and that just like mirroring back to how the games business works. It's all pretty transparent, I would say. Like at least on the double A slash indie front, like terms are very simple, very easy to understand, and it's not like I'm gonna have like a writer work on your indie game, and then whatever characters that writer creates, and in perpetuity, and all sequels everywhere is going to be owned by said writer. That never happens in our industry, as far as I know. Okay, I'm going to take a deep breath.
That's an interesting point. I was actually going to bring that up at some point. It's like I was going. You've kind of answered the question already, but like, why is it important to protect your rights and retain control and ownership of the IP? I say that because I think there are two very high-profile examples where, okay, I grant you, I'm not a legal expert. I don't know the intricate deals that are going on in the background. But if you look at, say, Harry Potter and Lord of the Rings, and how far those brands have extended and how much they have been milked is a strong word, but let's say adapted into like video games, books, plays, like prequel series, streaming series, like all this. You kind of get it wouldn't be hard to imagine that a lot of that is beyond what the original creators had intended, and is just it's primarily it's large companies, in this case the same one, Warner Brothers, and I have nothing against Warner Brothers, but you can imagine like, okay, here's these two hit fantasy franchises we have, right, we're going to do as much as we can with them because fans want more and we want more money. Like that's understandable, and it's easy to see how an indie caught up in the excitement might lose control. I guess, like, just to kind of emphasize that point, that this is essential that you check what's in the fine print, I guess.
I think it's very important to, especially if we talk about the indie space. On one hand, it's really important to maintain creative control, or work with people that you would trust for creative control in the medium that they specialize in. And then at the same time, like we talked about earlier, it's still important to have a great game. Without a great game, you have nothing. Therefore, what we've seen is that what works the best for us, at least, is we just trust a lot of other people that know what they're doing. We trust our licensing agents to read the fine prints, and then figure out the rights that we're actually like signing off. And we never go exclusive. Like as a rule of thumb, we just it's either a limited time exclusivity or just a non-exclusive, so that multiple companies can make merchandising or something else. Unless it takes off, like the books, then it's a different story. But here, to your point about large franchises and how they're being milked, there was an example in the 90s of a Fantastic Four movie that was absolutely terrible. It was just a very, very bad movie. And they go, oh, okay, well, comic book movies are bad in the 90s. What else do you want? But if you look at exactly why that happened, it kind of sheds light on why I am so pumped about this subject. Because I believe it was Marvel at the time that owned Fantastic Four still, and whoever owned it had optioned the rights to make a movie to a company, and then this company, if they didn't make a movie by a specific point in time, that option would expire and would not renew. Therefore, they had to make something, anything, just to keep those rights. And how messed up of a conflict of interest is that, right? And coming back to my example with characters, how messed up of a conflict of interest is that, I want to make a TV show based on your game, and I'm actually incentivized to write whole new characters because I can then benefit from them in the long run, and use essentially your characters that you have created initially as the base, and then I'm not incentivized to tell the original stories or make better reincarnations of that. It just blows my mind on how messy those rights can get, and also. Which you need to figure out. And I would be really curious to see how Cyberpunk figured it out with Keanu Reeves, because the rights on likenesses of celebrities is a whole different ballgame. So, like, I know, like, will they be able to do like a figurine based on Keanu Reeves' character in Cyberpunk? That's a rights nightmare. So that's also to, like, if you're trying to license someone to put into your game, there is a whole process there involved. And just to reiterate, smaller indie teams, please find someone you would trust with all of this, because having gone through this and built it out ourselves, I would not want to do it again. So now we have a pipeline for it, but if you don't and you're trying to like make a movie yourself or write a script, trust me, I tried writing a script for the animated series. It's bad. It's very bad. It had about 40 rewrites before we got to the actual pilot that we have, and the full season 1 script is going to be rewritten by a professional writer for the mess that I left behind.
We've got about 5 minutes left, so I'm going to throw you two more questions, and also because I'm rapidly running out of what little light I had.
Yeah, I think I saw some red eyes. Hopefully it's a raccoon.
Yeah. Flip side, let's assume that you are a lovely TV or film production company or book production company or book publisher or toy production company watching this, and you don't have any intention of seizing control of some hardworking indies IP. What is the best way to find the popular IP, like to actively seek and reach out to developers? Like, how do you identify the ones that have potential?
It's quite easy. Go to YouTube, go to new and trending in games, see what is popular there, filter out Fortnite, Roblox, and Minecraft, right? And then you will be able to see what is trending, and then cross-reference that with Google Trends. Quite easy, and it will show you where the players are geographically spread, what kind of target groups there are, and it just makes it really easy to understand how to what is the trajectory for that specific game. What you're also going to see a lot is things that trend as playable teasers, like I mentioned. What you need to understand here, if you're coming from a linear medium industry in terms of entertainment, is that game development will actually take much longer than TV and film production. That's something just to keep in mind. And the example that we just talked about today here over this call is it's unprecedented. Things like this haven't happened before. Please tell us if there are examples that you know of. But coming in on the ground floor on some of these IPs might be a really, really interesting investment. I would love to see some game that is currently at some sort of prototype stage, right? And then it has shown promise. It has market validated itself. It's gaining a lot of viral traction. I would love to see the game come out alongside a book or an anime series or a TV show or a film, just alongside that, and have the same creatives be involved in both. Obviously, the game designers, will focus on game design, but having them work in tandem with the linear narrative professionals, I want to see that. It hasn't happened yet. I believe it's an insane opportunity for both industries.
Now you say that, I want to see that as well.
Yeah, I know. Right?
I think the only time I've ever seen anything close to that is BioWare. Obviously, have Drew Capetian. He would write a novel to go with a Mass Effect books. Like the first Mass Effect had a prequel novel that went alongside it, and you could read it, and it gave you a bit more information on the characters, or you could ignore it, and you still enjoyed the game. But yeah, something more ambitious than that would be amazing. We are running out of time, so I'm going to ask you one last question. Are there any other TinyBuild franchises or games that you're publishing or helping with that you think would work well as a cross-media brand?
So I'm not going to name specifics. What I will say is that after the success of Hello Neighbor, we have fully shifted our strategy into partnering up with developers versus doing transactional relationships like we talked about at the GI.biz Summit a few months ago. And right now we have 17 IPs in development that are going on this trajectory. And we all know it's a hit-driven business. We all know that not everything is going to get there, but we're focusing on making great games first. And as soon as we prove their market validity, that's when we kickstart the whole franchising and merchandising machine. And I'm hoping that we'll be able to announce some things closer to end of year.
Thank you so much for your time this evening. That's been fantastic.
Thanks so much for having me.
Really, really appreciate you coming on. Everyone listening, please do stay tuned. We've got one more panel coming up. The Hunt for the Next Witcher. That's going to be available at the GamesIndustry.biz YouTube channel or live.gamesindustry.biz. We're almost there. One more session. And I think with that, that's us done. I'm just going to recede into the darkness.